General Services Committee to order. First item, I'll entertain a motion to approve the November 16, 2021 General Services Committee minutes, which have been all distributed by email. First by Bill, second. Josh, all right, thank you. All those in favor? Aye.
Is that an iron here?
Yes. I will have some comments to share ahead of Ryan's presentation, but before we get into that, we do have a facility improvement project overview, and I think Patrick Courier is here from CNS.
Yes.
The floor is yours, Mr. Courier.
Thank you, Ian. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our new legislators. And my name is Patrick Courier. I'm with CNS Companies. I'm from Watertown. I've worked in Jefferson, Lewis County, St. Lawrence counties here for the last 34 years. Many of you know me. With me today is also Nick Garito. He's with KT Construction. They're was selected by the legislative committee there towards the end of last year, right around December, as the CM for the proposed project. And also with us is Jim Garito from KT Construction. Nick and Jim are both from the Lowville area. Nick graduated from Lowville Academy, and we look forward to working together. Today's update is pretty much just to kind of update the past legislators on where we're at and the future legislators, legislators on how we got to this point and where we're headed from here. So in June of 2021, the legislators approved the 2022 Facilities Improvement Project Concept Development Report. As part of that, we delineated the scope of what the county, the different departments, community felt they needed for this project. And we put that into a document, whereas we were able to go back to the legislators and say, we feel that this is what will adequately suffice or, provide for what's needed for current day and going forward here into the future with your facilities to bring everything up to current standards, codes, rules, regulations, and so forth, and function and just efficiency of operations. So when we completed that report, we reviewed it, we did a PowerPoint presentation, went down through the renderings, the floor plans and everything with the legislators, and they approved to go ahead into construction documents. So for the last 6 months, we've been working on the construction documents, which brings us to where we are here. As part of the project is a new 7,400 square foot cold storage facility. It's a pre-engineered steel building. It'll be built right in the location of the wood pole barn that's there now. We've got that as being demolished by the county and reconstructed as part of our construction project. Next to that will be a 17,400 square foot new highway facility. Also a pre-engineered steel building, but naturally fully insulated. And with all the amenities, pretty much, except the frills. Yeah, it's gonna be a really nice facility. We work closely with Tim Hunt throughout the project. We work closely with Matt O'Connor for constructability. I've gotten to know these guys really well, talking to them almost every day. Trying not to pull everybody else into the daily correspondence just because there's so much time spent on it, but yet keeping the legislators updated at their meeting, plus the GSA, we've been to a couple of those meetings. Also on that same site, across on the west side of East Road, across from the existing highway garage, is a proposed vehicle wash bay building. We kept this separate from the highway garage for several reasons, but predominantly because of the amount of salt and sand and frozen tundra on top of the trucks. We wanted to bring them into a wash bay building that's fully concrete, block walls, epoxy coated paint. The roof deck will be Spancrete, so we don't have any steel in there to worry about as far as corrosion or anything else. We've got onto those is we have the renovations of the DSS building. The DSS building is approximately 21,000 square feet, and we've discussed completely gutting and rehabbing that building. It was built in the 80s, and we're going to basically strip it down to the skeleton and reconstruct it to meet today's standards to last you for well into the future. And then the final couple projects is the new maintenance shop behind DSS. There's a storage building there now that we're delineating to have the county tear that down to at least down to grade. It's a wood structure. And then the contractor will come in and remove the foundations as far down as they need to go and construct a new structure on that property for maintenance shop. And then we have the renovations to the existing highway garage for outdoor services. We're relocating soil and water from the DSS building over to the existing highway garage. And we're also moving parks and recreation into that highway garage. And we're still maintaining quite a bit of a storage area there. So we basically have about 4,100 square feet of renovations within the highway garage, 4,100 square feet of interior renovations to build it out for office area. The remainder will still be storage. Time frame for the project, as I mentioned, the last 6 months, we've been working on the construction documents. Those documents are ready to go. We've got somewhere just over 200 drawings. We've reviewed them over the course of the last month to cross T's, dot I's. We've reviewed them with KT Construction as well as quite extensively there with Matt O'Connor. We've had all our engineers for each discipline, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, structural. They've had other people within their disciplines do peer reviews and QA, QC to make sure, that everything looked good and complete. So we're comfortable presenting to the legislators right now that we're ready to go to bid as soon as they make a determination to do so. We have sent to Ryan and Joan, the advertisement for bids. We've reviewed it. KT Construction's reviewed it, and just waiting on any thoughts and comments from legal as far as specifics on that. And feel free to adjust that as you feel fit. Within that notice to bidders, if the legislators decide to go ahead with this, we're prepared to, that advertisement can be sent out as early as this afternoon or tomorrow. And with that being said, if that goes ahead, we'd be looking at a walkthrough on January 31st, where we meet over at the existing highway garage. We walk everybody through that. Purposely, we're doing that first and then going over to DSS and coordinating that with Jenny so that we can meet over there at the end of the day when pretty much everybody is gone and walk the contractors through that building. So that would be January 31st. Bids tentatively would be due February 10th. And We talked about possibly having a special legislative meeting, if you're able to schedule that for February 24th. Between the 10th and the 24th would give us plenty of time for KT Construction, Jim, Nick, myself to review the bids and to vet the contractors. Sometimes it may just be the low contractor, other times we may call the low and the second lowest contractor. There's even times maybe where we've got all three of them before we make a final decision on who we recommend. And then at that point, we basically, we'll show up here for the legislative meeting and give you our letter of recommendation, and the legislators decide from there. After that point, is everything is rolling is, excuse me, the masks. I used to talking with start construction, trying to go slow because I tend to hyperventilate with these things. Start construction in spring of 2022. And then we're looking at, starting with the new buildings over on the highway site initially, getting those up. And then once they're completely erected, I think you were planning somewhere in December of 2022 roughly. And then we need a little bit of time to move the people from outdoors, from the existing highway garage to the new. And then what we'll do is, once that's done, we'll be starting the DSS building. And also, we're starting DSS in September of 2022. And we'll start the existing highway garage, renovating that for outdoor services on or about the same time. Critical dates are starting construction spring of 2022 and completing in July of 2023. What we'll do is once we have contractors selected, we'll sit down with them initially, review the construction schedule with them, make sure that they're, we'll let them, we can't do too much with the means and the methods of how they get from point A to B, but we can sit down and have them provide, us with how they'd like to do that. We'll review it, and the CM group will, create a master plan from the individual primes. That being said, we started off initially figuring for 4 separate primes, according to Wick's law, New York State. We have to have a GC, mechanical, plumbing, and electrical. Through discussions with KT, we decided to have a 5th prime contractor for sprinkler. The sprinkler portion is about $500,000. So rather than have that underneath another contractor and have them marking it up, that should save the county around the neighborhood of $40,000 there. And then it just becomes a coordination thing for Nick. Budget-wise, we did receive the final cost estimate from Trophy Point Estimating. They were a subcontract to us for the project. They did an initial budget, their estimate at 60%. And the final that we just got through, the final was it was about $300,000 less than the previous. So we were able to stay on task with what our scope was. We had a few things that we deleted out of the project, a few other things that got added in, but overall we managed to keep everything pretty constant. We've established unit costs for about 5 different unit costs for the site work. The site work will be done under the GC because it's directly correlated to the work they're doing. And rather than having another contract, we figured that would be best. But there are unit costs there. We've had geotechnical borings done. We're comfortable with the knowledge of the existing conditions of the site, but every now and then you'll take a geotechnical boring here and the subsurface looks good, and you might be 20 feet away and find an old elevator shaft or something. Had that happen recently. Lewis County, maybe not as much, but so the nice thing about the unit cost is now they're obligated to remove and replace the materials for the cost that they state in their bid form. So it's it's exactly that. It's for unforeseens rather than waiting until the unforeseens come up. This way we know that if it comes up, this is what your cost is going to be. That's really not going to win or lose a bid for somebody. but it gives us something to work with. We've also included allowances for the 5 prime contractors within the project, and those allowances total about 2%. They'll be issued as change orders with the approval by either GSA or legislators, however we substantiate that when we get to construction.
Sorry,
Thank you.
that's the schedule.
And so those allowances, the nice part about that too is Jim worked quite diligently on this, is to define the allowances as being, within their contract so that they can't come back and say, yeah, it's $10,000 worth of work, but with our overhead profit and everything else. Well, if it's not really adding to the contract time frame, they've got a foreman on site, they have a lot of their overhead and their profit already figured into the project. So by utilizing an allowance, it eliminates them from being able to come back and add overhead and profit to their change orders. Whatever allowance doesn't get utilized, naturally would be credited back at the end of the project with a change order to the county. It's also kind of like, you can look at it as a contingency within the project also. See, I think that's pretty much it. Anything else, Nick or Jim, to add?
You didn't tell us the bottom line.
The bottom line is 19 million, 300, 350, 19 million, 300. 19 million, 300. So that's also with, contingencies figured in there, design, bidding, and there's hopefully.
That's the total package.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And hopefully, I'm hoping it'll be less.
Yeah.
Trophy Point's a good estimating company, that's all they do, and they typically try to, they're not bidding it competitively like a contractor would. They're basically saying, this is what we feel the average would be, we're gonna have highs, lows. So from their aspect, they wanna, to promote their company, they always wanna be in that middle sweet spot area, they wanna be right there. They don't wanna be a company that's known that's just for throwing out high numbers and scaring everybody, and they don't want to be that one that throws in low numbers and then you're not prepared for it. So with that said, hopefully they're, we'll know soon.
We will know, won't we?
Yes.
Do you need anything from us right now for the sprinkler portion? Like, cause I was separating that off as a separate bid.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think we need any type of,
Any other questions from the committee?
I think to that point of, the only thing we would need today is, acknowledgement to move ahead with the bidding, however you go about it.
Yeah. I guess we've got that as one of our motions.
Oh.
So. Anybody else have questions or comments?
Good job.
Thank you.
So thank
We
you
look
guys.
forward to it. Jim and Nick are looking forward to it. And we'll naturally, as things get rolling along, we'll work through Ryan there to make sure that we schedule regular meetings to keep everybody up to date on things, and we'll right through it.
Great, thank you.
Thank
guys.
you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is just a general services committee goals from Ryan for 2022. I did want to give a quick introduction just to share some of my thoughts. I want to thank the members of the committee for their willingness to serve on this with us. I also want to join the chorus of voices expressing gratitude for Jerry King's service on this committee. There's a saying that's been attributed to the ancient Greeks that a city grows great when the elders plant trees, though they may never live to rest under their shade. Jerry's approach to government revealed a deeply rooted and principled conservatism, and also prescience for how the decisions we made would impact the community decades into the future. His is an example that I would hope to aspire towards imitating in this next year. General services encompasses many of the oldest and most traditional functions of local government, including highways, criminal justice, police, codes, emergency management, solid waste, and several others. These are often the departments with which citizens are most accustomed to first-person contact with their government. And to that end, we are at our best when we have a good team of staff and department heads, as we do. With such a good team of staff and a culture that prioritizes hiring on the basis of qualification and merit, our board is free to focus on big-picture goals without needing to micromanage day-to-day operations. And to that, Ryan is going to share some of the committee goals that we've been discussing over the last several weeks. Take it away, Ryan.
Very good. I've got copies for everybody here. Legislators. They say draft on them because I figure, today if we get enough general consensus, then we can go from draft to reality. So, the first and probably most important task that this committee is going to face is the general supervision of the building renovation project. So when we talk about, big picture items that are outside of the day-to-day, this is a once in a, generation type investment for the county. So that's going to be something that I'm planning on bi-monthly updates from KT and Patrick. Once we get into the heat of construction, you may want to go to monthly updates from KT and Patrick. There's also a small group of legislators that are going to be more intimately involved in day-to-day development, probably, more of a weekly update for them. The second issue is one regarding emergency medical services, EMS. Bob McKenzie and I have been talking. I'm talking to the folks at Lewis County Search and Rescue. We're coming to a point in this community where, this is an essential service, and it's being pushed to the brink right now in terms of capacity. Our volunteerism is down for understandable reasons, Lewis County Search and Rescue could use a little help, direction in terms of their finances. Many counties across the state are getting involved in EMS, even though it's traditionally been viewed as a town or village issue. Rural communities across the state are struggling with this, and sometimes there's a county solution that might make some sense. Sometimes just the county stepping up to help bridge some gaps might make sense, or sometimes we can just step in and try to come up with a way to make sure everybody's playing nicely in the sandbox and we're being as efficient as possible. I don't want to project what the outcome of this will be, but I think this committee needs to spend some time thinking about that for the future. And so I'd like to kind of have one session introduce the issue, and then maybe a couple more follow-ups throughout the year to kind of see if there's some role that the county might be able to play in straightening this out for our residents. The third issue is the Central Lewis Water Study. So we've completed phase 1 of that. We also have the Southern Lewis Water Study under our belt as well. We're having phase 2 of the Central Lewis Water Study that is kicking off on the 25th. There'll be a meeting right here at 5 o'clock on the 25th. Anybody who's interested in that. 5 o'clock, Cass? Yep. And again, this is not one where I have an exact vision of where we're going to end up, but there certainly seems to be a role for countywide coordination on this issue. So we'll get into that. Finish Singing Waters Park. This is something that's been under construction for 2 years at this point. It is a beautiful county asset. We need to get this thing done, reopened, and it's going to be priority of this committee to keep that project on task. We're rebidding out the bathhouse here this spring, and we need to get the site tighter seated and just ready to be open. Got to think about, we're going to need a governance policy for that park in terms of, what are the rates we're going to charge, how long can people stay, behavior and rules, operational rules for the park, those types of things. ATV lobbying. So we put $60,000 in the budget to hire a firm to help us kind of understand what some of the opposition in Albany is to the ongoing issue with ATVs and the conflicts with the Department of Transportation law and some environmental rules, all those types of things. This committee is going to be the one that needs to kind of stay in touch with that, receive regular updates, and make sure that we're kind of getting our money's worth over this next year and advancing this mission. The Ag Sustainability Study, as you know, we put that out to RFP and hired a firm to talk about dairy balancing, if there's an opportunity for the county to think more clearly or to participate in helping balance out some of the dairy problems that we've been having. We have one large purchaser that kind of drives the market. Everyone understands that. But is there an opportunity for maybe some more balancing or other investments that could attract and diversify our ag industry? So that study results will be available in April. And then Advance the Rails to Trails initiative. That's going to be a big one that is going to require motions and involvement from this committee going forward. So those are the things that we thought of. If there's additional items, obviously day-to-day oversight and oversight of, things that come up throughout the year is going to take time. But these are the big things. And I'll turn it back over to Ian.
Any comments, questions?
Yeah, Ryan, if I could, we're learning more and more that words matter sometimes and they get misinterpreted. On the water study, I think discuss is a good topic there, but implement, some of them are long-term recommendations.
Yeah.
Somehow we need to know that there's going to be a lot of discussion before you implement.
Good point.
And we got a meeting coming shortly, we're starting.
How about discuss, review, and discuss?
Yep.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Ryan. Sandra, I think we can proceed with our dockets.
Okay. The first docket is authorizing the County of Lewis by and through the Lewis County Highway Superintendent to act as sponsor for 4 Town Bridge New York projects by the named towns and authorizing intermunicipal agreements with each town for the projects.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Authorizing application for CDBG-CD funding under New York State Homes and Community Renewal for housing improvements to McNeil Park Apartments, Copenhagen, New York, with Snowbelt Housing Company serving as program administrator.
Any discussion?
Is McNeil the old 801? Probably up there, is that different? So
It's Happy Acres in Copenhagen.
it's what?
It's Happy Acres in
Happy Acres.
Copenhagen.
Okay.
Apparently they're not happy.
You get happy?
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Authorizing intermunicipal agreement between the County of Lewis and the Village of Turn for financial assistance towards the village's comprehensive plan.
Any discussion?
Make it notice and recuse.
We have Josh's recusal. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, nay?
Can I make a note, Ian?
Sure.
This is money that we put in the budget every year. It's not super expensive. This is only the second municipality that we've assisted. I think last year we did the town in Bremen, this year Turin. Any of your towns that struggle with zoning or have comprehensive plans that go back to the 80s or earlier, or maybe don't have a comprehensive plan for land use, we have money in the budget to assist. So when you're at your meetings and you hear them talking about these issues, say, call Cassandra, we have money available, we can redo your comp plans. So glad that Turn took advantage of it, we're glad that New Bremen's taking advantage of it. But we know there are other towns that need help.
We help the town, Greg.
We didn't help the town of Gray?
It was actually the town of Watson last
Oh,
year,
Watson.
but the village of Copenhagen may move forward with their comprehensive plan too. So there are some that are.
All right. Next one.
Authorizing subrecipient agreement with Lewis County Industrial Development Agency to administer the micro enterprise revolving loan grant funds and program under project 636 ME 980-21.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, nay?
Authorizing agreement between the County of Lewis and Paradigm Environmental LLC for professional air monitoring services for the New York Main Street Downtown Stabilization Project.
Any discussion?
Yeah, this is the one with Michael.
I'll note, Dick, this has got you introducing it because it involves a matter I need to recuse on.
Okay, sure.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, nay? No more recusal.
Setting a public hearing with reference to inclusion of agriculturally viable land into the certified agricultural district number 6.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, nay?
And moving on to motions, the first one is a motion to authorize Buildings and Grounds Director Matt O'Connor to send out an RFP for a new heated sidewalk in front of the new courthouse addition.
This is in the capital project, or excuse me, capital budget. And when you guys walk in, you'll note the salt has done quite some damage on that portion of the sidewalk. Also, the salt up against the foundation of the new addition is not something that we're real pleased about. So the rest of that front sidewalk is actually all heated all the way down out to North State Street. We'd like to replace the section, the small section from the parking lot into the main entrance with heated sidewalk as well. No salt, no scraping, just the snow will melt it once it hits it. So.
Would anybody like to make that motion?
Come on, Mike.
That's okay. Not this here.
I woke up.
Okay, Josh,
I'll
made
second it.
Dick second, all right? We vote on it now?
To send it to the board.
Send it, okay.
Right.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
The next motion is to authorize CNS companies to send out an RFP for the 2022 facilities improvement project.
Moved by Phil, second. Dick, thank you. All in favor, aye? Aye.
So just to be clear on these project RFPs, we're allowing committees to send out RFPs. We're only allowing the board to accept and award bids.
Okay.
So these two that you did are sending out are authorizing them to send out RFPs.
The third motion is to authorize Sheriff Carpinelli to refill one full-time dispatcher/corrections officer position and all associated backfills effective immediately due to resignation.
Somebody like to make a motion?
Sure.
Thank you, Dick. Second? Josh? All in favor? Aye.
We
There's a
have-
fourth one.
Yep, we have a fourth motion that came in late. This is a motion to authorize Planning Director Cassandra Buell to refill one full-time community development program specialist effective immediately.
I'll make that.
Second? Thank you, Josh. All in favor? I think after today, the planning board will be underneath, or sorry, planning department will be under finance and rules, is that correct?
Yes, we'll be discussing that in
Oh,
finance.
they'll need to discuss it too, okay. I don't think we have any executive session. Are there any new matters to bring up for the General Services Committee?
We have a couple minutes, I can just expand on the ATV lobbying. We did have an initial meeting. Larry, Dick, and Tom have been asked to participate a little more intimately. The rest of the group will be involved on a regular basis as well. We had a kickoff meeting with our lobbying firm, Park Strategies. Really positive first meeting. They sat and listened to us for about an hour and a half and then went to lunch for another hour and listened more. So it's not an issue that they're familiar with, I'll tell you that much. But they're coming up to speed quickly. They've got ideas about who we need to talk to. And they really wanted to impress upon us that, this is about creating a story. This is about telling our story, telling the folks in Albany why it matters. They were very receptive to adding more voices to the conversation. We've gotten, I'm sure you guys have as well, but I've received several calls since it was on the news that we were hiring this firm, people that were very supportive of what we were doing. Implement dealers, 2 separate implement dealers, one in Lewis County, one in Jefferson County, contacted us, thanking us, asking if they could participate. So as we go down the line, we got to give these guys a little bit of time to kind of figure out what we're talking about here. But when it gets time to maybe make some trips down to Albany or build a broader coalition, they're very open to that idea. So, the legislative session kicks off, I believe this week, probably the first couple sessions, are usually end of January, first couple days of session. It's not impossible, but probably unlikely that we're going to get legislative change this year. But we're setting the table, understanding where the roadblocks are, so the next year, we're looking at a green light going forward. So it's probably not something that's going to change overnight, but something that, and we might get some agency, as long as it's not a law, it's an agency rule, or some of those types of things, we might be able to get some changes. But realistically, it's just it's unlikely, not impossible, but unlikely to get somebody through this legislative session. So great session as far as I'm concerned. I came out of it feeling optimistic. I don't know if Dick, you had any other thoughts?
No, it's a tough project. When 7 legislators resigned and 7 new ones were added to it, Craig, Brennan and I worked on that pretty heavy for about 3 years. And we never could get by the stonewalling. And so that's what this group that we've hired is supposed to help us with, is get us around the potholes so that we can make a positive impact on it. One of the bad things is the 2 leading Republican people have, one retired, one was reelected. So some of our support waned down there, but that could be a good thing because there may be the replacements who are more inclined to listen to us. Like Ryan said, I thought it was positive with this group, and it's like fighting City Hall with somebody who knows how to do it.
All right, could you
Representatives on board with this?
Oh, yes.
Ryan, could you give us just a 2-minute summary of kind of the specific, either regulatory or legislative objectives? I know we talked about remuneration for landowners, we've talked about UTVs. What are we really looking at specifically?
So very specifically, we're talking about the weight limit that the Department of Transportation recognizes in state law. And actually, I bet Josh can give a more detailed response, but right now the weight limit is set at 1,000 pounds or 999 pounds. We know very well that our implement dealers are selling larger equipment and people are buying and utilizing larger equipment. The state is, by not addressing or changing any statutory limits since the 1980s, the early 1980s, they are basically ignoring the fact that these machines exist and are running in their state. So one, getting the state to recognize that their law is just burying its head in the sand, more or less, on this issue. The second issue is registration. If we were allowed to, if the state law addressed these larger machines and addressed the registration law, currently it costs $12.40 or something to register a UTV because it hasn't been updated since the 80s. If they recognize the potential for the sport in New York State. They use the registration fees similarly to how they're using the snowmobile industry to send money back to clubs for enforcement and maintenance.
Or even fishing license, hunting license.
Yes,
Same idea.
precisely.
Yeah.
So if the state truly is concerned, environmentally with the impact of damage to the environment and lack of enforcement, then this would actually be a way to address that by giving us funds through the registration fees to keep the trails clean, safe, and enforced, and to keep people out of the areas that are environmentally sensitive. Is that about Larry, Josh?
I would say they were very attentive to build a story. To them, this is a process of education, that the majority of representation comes from downstate that doesn't recognize what the industry is or the potential of it. They were very busy taking notes, trying to figure out what our goals were, what the issues are, trying to build a story to address the overall issues. So I think it's going to be a good marriage, so to speak. As Ryan says, it's going to take time. They recognize that this is going to be a very lengthy educational process. They need to meet with many representatives, and not only them, but the staff that's behind all of those representatives, to accomplish our goals, and it's going to take a while.
Yeah, they took a lot of notes. I sat there watching and they wrote down pretty much everything that was said. They were quite impressed, I think, with the idea of the sales tax that's missed by people going out of state and buying them and not being able to register them, the financial loss there. So it was a good meeting.
Yeah, we also they said that we set the table nicely by asking specific questions in our Jcc Animal Survey. So we have hard data there, and we did the ATV study, which will give us hard data. So, a lot of times they jump on these issues and they have to spend the first year just collecting the facts. We've already collected the facts for them, and not just once, we've done it, consistently through the survey data. So we've got good, depth of data. So yeah, that was very good. And if I could, since we've got a couple more minutes, on the Rails to Trails issue, we also met with some folks to advance that. That was a good meeting. I don't want to get too far into it. We would need to go into executive session, I think, to get too much into the details. But the first step is we need to get a survey done. So that'll be happening soon. We'll get a survey of the entire railroad property. And from there, probably we'll have a more detailed presentation of the full committee at some point. But right now, we're just kind of moving forward with the preliminary steps.
Great, thank you, Ryan. If there's nothing else for the General Services Committee, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Dick. Second, Josh, all in favor, aye? Aye. Thank you very much. I'll
The
remind
record reflect 45 minutes.